So fun to have all of you. What we really want to talk about today is go advanced on how we can use AI, especially with nonprofits. I think what we'll talk about today can really be applied to business as well, but we'll kind of focus on nonprofit use cases. I'm excited to do this alongside Joseph. So, Joseph, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience before we jump in?
Yeah, thanks so much, Scott. So as you mentioned, this is round two. A couple weeks ago, we did round one, where it was more of an introductory 101 level, and now we're going to dive even deeper on this topic. And the reason why I wanted to partner with Chip on this with greater than 0% is because over the past 4 years, learning a lot about the different challenges that executive directors and nonprofits in general have related to wearing many hats, related to wanting to focus on the community and not worry about other aspects, but still needing to share the story and drive engagement, whether it's getting more people to donate, getting grants, what have you. And so I felt it was meant to be when I met Scott and learned that one of his use cases was in the nonprofit industry or nonprofit sector. So fast forward to today, here we are, and we're building with you all, and really excited to see what the result is, because you all are going to help shape a lot of the kind of important use cases, most important use cases for folks like you in the nonprofit space that we're going to help accelerate and support. So yeah, thanks a lot, Scott. Really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, this is going to be a ton of fun. So, what we're going to do today is kind of two big things. We're going to talk about step prompting, which we touched on a little bit in the last session, but this will really dive deeper and help you build or flip the relationship with ChatGPT, where it's actually extracting information and then providing answers instead of you having to provide the answers. So that's what we call step prompting. We'll dive through that. And then we're going to talk about automations using specifically Zapier. There's alternatives like Make out there as well, but really thinking about where are the places in our business that we can add automation with AI in the middle, right? So if we go from one piece of information through AI, what can we get on the other end in a repeatable process that doesn't require a lot of human work? So that's kind of our goal today. And I love the jokes coming in. Thanks for sharing that, Sean. Feel free to keep using. What we're going to do first is make sure that you have a Chip account, because we're going to use that for our first kind of step. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have it in incognito mode. You can follow along. If you already have a Chip account, you can log in. But to get started, go to chip.ai, which is CHIPP.ai, and go ahead and click that Get Started button. And then you're going to come to a sign up screen. So you can either sign up with your email or with Google. Once you complete that sign up, you're going to get an email verification. So make sure you use an actual email, because you'll need to click that to log in. And I'll give you just a moment to do that, or to log into an account if you already have it. And I will show you what it looks like once you're logged in. So I'll give you about 15 seconds here. You can kind of log in, make sure your email, find your password, reset your password if you need to, whatever the case might be. And once you are logged in, you're going to see app.chip.ai. The great question from Amir, we always love this question, is this is going to be recorded. So we'll send you a copy of this. I'll edit it slightly to cut out the friendly banter. So only you get to see the jokes, but everyone will get the information. We'll put it up as a blog post, actually. So I'll have Andre put a link to our blog here in the chat. So that's probably the best way to make sure you get it. I'll try to add everybody as well. So, all right. So hopefully by now you had a chance to create your Chip account or to log in. If you have any problems, just go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm going to share my screen again to just show you what we're going to be doing here on Chip, and then we'll kind of dive into the content. So if you're on Chip, go ahead and just click on the applications on the left. And you might only have like a demo app, or maybe you've tried creating a few. That's great. We're going to go ahead and click on New Application. So what we're going to do first is step prompting. So what I want you to think about is, what's a use case for your nonprofit, or maybe for a hypothetical nonprofit if you're not working for one yet, that you want to help? What's a process that is going to be done frequently, maybe by people who aren't as technically savvy, right? So something you might build for someone else who's not going to necessarily log into ChatGPT or know what to do. So very common use cases for this in a nonprofit would be writing grants, creating blog posts, social media posts, creating agendas for board meetings, maybe sending notes to board members, maybe organizing volunteers or communicating with volunteers, something like that. So whatever it is you think, you can just name your application that. Everything can change later on, right? So I'm going to just do one called volunteer agenda is going to be mine. And this is going to be creating an agenda for volunteers on a weekly basis. Okay. So I'll give you just about 10 seconds to think about that. And why don't you, in the chat, once you have a use case or an idea, go ahead and put it. It might inspire other people. So if you see on Zoom, you have the chat option. I'm going to go ahead and just put a volunteer agenda. Once you have a use case, go ahead and put it in there. Once I see a few of them coming in, I'll know that you guys have had enough time. One thing you'll see if you're watching my screen is I'm going to flip off monetization. So one thing you can do with Chip is you can build AI tools that you charge for. But for our purposes, for step prompting, we're going to use this internally. So we're not going to want to charge our own team, right? So we're going to shut off the monetization. So to create a new application, once you're logged in, on the top right, you should see that. So there's a yellow button here called application, or you get started, click on the applications on the left, and then you might see it. You're probably going to get dropped right into an application if it's your first time. So you could actually just use that. And Andre also put a direct link if it's easier there. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and create my application, volunteer agenda, and I'm going to put a short description, create agendas each week for volunteers. And then I'm going to shut off monetization and click create. So now this might be what you see, Jacques, which is totally fine. And everyone else should be able to see this. So a couple of things we can do on Chip, and we're going to spend most of the time building it, but I want to show you how you could modify this, right? You could add a logo. So you could add whatever image you want. That'll be kind of your image for your GPT that your team's going to see. You can also change the color, right, to whatever you want. And this default trial is only if you're charging, so you can kind of ignore that. What we want to do is go into the build section, and this is where we are going to start learning about step prompting, create our first AI tool for our team. So with Chip, you can build on OpenAI and connect it into Chip. So essentially Chip becomes a front end. What we're going to do is everything is going to be a prompt, meaning you don't have to pay for anything on OpenAI. You don't have to have an OpenAI account, and you just do everything in one place. So go ahead on that and click on prompt. Yes. Good question, Breedy. So is Chip going to be free to use and share without monetization enabled forever? Will it eventually move to a narrow freemium model? Our plan is to keep it as is, which is you can build 3 applications for free, but you can't take off the Chip branding if it's free. Essentially, it lives on our subdomain. So like yourname.chip.ai. And then if you pay, you remove the branding. So it could be breedy.com, and then you could build more applications. Yeah. So definitely want to keep it free because we kind of see that as our growth strategy, right? People sharing these and seeing Chip kind of like early Hotmail, right? Or sent by Hotmail or whatever. Yeah, so in the build section, we have prompt and the system prompt. This system prompt is going to be what we're telling the AI to do. We have some conversation starters that we're going to add in just a second. The other thing I wanted to highlight is we already shut off monetization, but you can make sure you shut that off. And then we have authentication. This is kind of up to you. Most people, I would say right now, are turning it off. Basically, this means, does the user have to log in to use your tool? So do you want to limit who's using this tool based on, only members of your company? You might do that if the information is somewhat proprietary or private. For me, I'm using volunteers, right? So I just want as many people as possible to do this. I'm going to shut off authentication. So that's kind of what that means. You can decide what is the best approach there. So I'll give you about 10 seconds here to flip things to prompt. And if you want to shut off authentication, you can. And then we're going to actually build this step prompt and talk through kind of how to do that. So I'll stop sharing my screen for just a moment and see if there's any questions. If you want to give me a thumbs up, if you caught up to me, if you're in a good place, you can do that. Or if you're not on video, just put a 1 in the chat if you're feeling good. Love that. Donor retention from Jason B. That's good. Looking good, Sean. All right. Jacques, let me know if you're good. You can give me a thumbs up. All right. We're good. All right. We got some friends that are caught up now. So now what we want to do is talk a little bit about step prompting. I'll talk about it at a theoretical level, and then I'm going to give you a step prompt, and then you're going to create your own. So step prompting, as I said, flips an AI tool to be asking you questions instead of you telling it answers. So the reason why we do step prompting is because often we want to build GPTs, like a custom chat GPT, for multiple people to use. So Reedy might decide, she wants everyone in her nonprofit to be able to write blog posts or to send out, volunteer agendas without necessarily knowing how to use ChatGPT, or in a similar way. So everyone kind of creates the same thing. So this is important. If you have multiple people doing marketing, multiple volunteers contribute, you want to have some kind of consistency in voice. And so we can do that by training our AI to get information and then create the output based on what it asks for. So instead of you saying to ChatGPT, write me a blog post in the style of Scott Meyer, it's going to flip it around and say, ask the person, what do you want to write the blog post about? Get the information. And then you're already going to have it programmed to always write in the style of Scott Meyer or based on a specific example. So that way it's creating the information for you. So that's kind of how we think about step prompting. And I call it step prompting because we literally are telling the AI to do specific steps and to pause between each step, which is the really key here, which is, if you don't tell the AI to pause, it's just going to start creating, right? You say, I want a blog post about, this nonprofit mission. It'll just create it without asking any questions. So what we're trying to do is slow it down and get specific information before creating our output. So what I'm going to do is share my screen with a Google Doc. I'm going to share that link with you. And what I invite you to do is make a copy of it. Because I'm going to have you do is change what I give you to your own use case. And then we're going to bring that into Chip. So I'm going to grab the link here and then also share my screen. So we'll go here and we'll share our guide to step prompting. So you should see my screen now, and I'll show you briefly what I'd like for you to do, and then I'll share the link. So when you get your link, the very first thing to do is go up to File and click Make a Copy. You're going to have viewer access on this, right? So you can't change anything unless you make your own version. So you can just go up here and click Make a Copy. That'll make a version on your own Google account. So that way that you can, do whatever you want and it won't mess it up for anybody else. So I'll put that link in the chat right now. Go ahead and click that, and you can click Create a Copy under File. So I'll give you just a second to kind of do that and then we'll walk through kind of what's in a step prompt. So give you a few seconds here, and you can just put a 1 in the chat once you got your own copy on your account. I know some people have done this a lot. It's really easy. Some people get lost on the Google make a copy steps. So I want to make sure everyone kind of keeps up. All right, Joseph, a pro. Even though he's at Amazon, he knows how to use Google products. All right, thanks, Reedy. Jason's caught up. All right, looks like people are doing it just fine. So we got some folks flowing in. If you get stuck, go ahead and drop a question in the chat. We can help you out. Now, I'm going to talk through this document, and then we're going to have you iterate on it, and then we'll use it in Chip. So when I do prompting, I like to do as much as I can in the system prompt window. So we can use files and what's called RAG, but I like it whenever possible, put everything in the prompt. I find it gives good answers and it's faster to iterate. Also, you don't need to have an OpenAI account. So that makes it really easy for people who are trying to not spend as much money. When I do this, just for my own visual purposes, and I think it also helps the results, I write it in what's called Markdown, which is basically like headlines without having headlines. So what I do is I'll put a double pound sign and then a section name. And then visually, when I'm looking at the system prompt, at the question I'm going to create for the AI, I can easily kind of scan through and find the different sections. And I think that helps a little bit too with the AI tool. So what I want to show you is I'm going to start on the step prompting and go back to the RIPE framework. We talked about the RIPE framework in our last session. That's going to be a little bit about giving the AI a personality. But the piece that is new, or we want to dive deeper in, is step prompting. So what you'll see in the step prompting is the clear steps that we're going to ask someone who's using the tool. And so what you have in front of you is anything in bold, for sure you're going to want to change. So the example you have is for writing a grant. So you can see step 1 is background information. So we're going to ask the team member about a short introduction to the grant they want to write. If we're doing a volunteer agenda, we might ask the team member about the agenda, how long it should be or what it should include. If we're doing donor relations, we might want to ask the user, what kind of message they're trying to write. So kind of background information about what you're trying to do, but that user is going to give that answer, right? So they're going to tell the AI what they're doing. The second step we're going to give is detailed information. So that's where we then ask them for more details. So how long should the agenda be? Maybe where it is, what kind of technology. If it's donor relations, what kind of messaging are you trying to write? How long is the email? Any kind of details about what the output should look like will be your second step. The third step, if you have it, would be asking the user for an example. One of the best techniques with AI is to actually ask it to match voice and tone. So if you have a previous agenda, if you have a previous email to a donor, if you have a previous grant introduction, you would actually ask them to copy and paste that into the Chip chat in just a little bit. And so by pasting that in, the AI tool is going to be able to match exactly what they do. And then the fourth step is to actually take action. So we're going to then have the AI do the thing we want them to do. So in this example, it's write the first section of the grant. It might be create the agenda for our meeting. It might create the email for a donor. It might be, summarize the meeting for a board member, whatever it might be. And you can add details in here, like use headlines, whatever it might be. So you can kind of look at what we have in this take action step and modify it. The fifth step then is just confirmation. Ask them if they're satisfied. And if not, go back to step 4. And then I always like to make it a little fun. So at the end, give them a high five and ask them if they want to do anything else. So this is an example of a system prompt. And what I'd like to do then is to combine the step prompting with the right framework. So the right framework is how you're going to tell the AI tool to act no matter who's interacting with it. So in this case, you're a skilled grant writer helping write new grants. Your job is to write an introductory section for an application. You might change that to, you're a friendly business assistant helping to create an agenda for a weekly board meeting, right? Or you are a smooth talking donor relations manager writing emails to frequent donors, whatever it might be. So this is, as we talked about in our last session, this is the XYZ statement. Yeah, you are an X doing Y for Z. And that's just going to help your AI kind of talk naturally in the right way. And you can see I added a little bit of information then telling it to follow the steps exactly. So this is where we're telling the AI to pause between each of the steps. So these are the two big pieces to step prompting, the right framework, which we already talked about, and then the steps. And so what I invite you to do now is to spend about 3 minutes, I'll put some music on, and create your own version of a step prompt. So anything that's bold, for sure, change, and then read through it and make other edits that you might want. And remember that this is flipping AI on its head, right? So we're not explicitly telling it what to do. Instead, we're telling it what to ask, and then it'll take action based on the answers, right? So I'll pause there. I'll turn on some music, but go ahead. If you have questions, you can unmute or drop them in the chat. And we'll give you about 3 minutes here to kind of see what you can build. One thing you'll notice in the example is I always tell it to communicate in short conversation, more like text messaging rather than long sentences. I find that for other users in particular, it acts more quickly. And it's almost better to have 4 or 5 back and forths rather than one really long one. Because if you get off a little bit, it'll go further off the beaten path. So I really like short conversations. So you'll notice that as one thing you might want to steal from the example prompt. Yeah, great question, Amir. I'll actually have Andre put an answer in the chat for that. I think that'll get a little technical just for today's webinar, but we can definitely in the prompt reference file names, which is the way that I've also often seen that work. And I know Andre's done some of that as well. So I will put that here in the chat for him to see. Great question. All right, I'll give you about 30 more seconds to kind of tweak your step prompt. All right, give me a quick vibe check in the chat. Just put a 1 if you're close enough to move forward. If you need more time, give me a 0. All right, great question from Reedy. Right now, only the paid version of ChatGPT will crawl the web and switch over automatically. We haven't integrated that on chip. What we're looking at is you could put a specific URL in, so like essentially your own website, and use that as training material, but that's not live yet. So yeah, can't quite crawl the web yet. All right, we got 2 1s. I don't see any 0s, but maybe people are too busy. All right, well, we'll try to move forward here and see if you get stuck, we can go back and catch it. But I'll show you kind of what we want to do next. So as we kind of play around with our prompt, we're going to take what we have now and move it into chip. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to select all on this Google Doc and copy it, right? So we're just going to select all and copy it. And then I'm going to jump over to chip and paste that into the prompt area. So you can go ahead and copy what you have and then go into chip. And then here in the system prompt, I'm going to go ahead and just paste that in. So now that is I've now trained my chip chat to respond to people. And the last thing I can do is create a conversation starter for them to get started. So right now, this is actually grant writer. So it might be something like, let's write a grant, right? So it's going to be the very first thing. I'm going to rename this so that it matches what we're doing. But go ahead and copy and paste that in, and I'll create a grant, and then we can test it out. So once you copy and paste that in, on the right, you can actually see your chip chat right here, and you can start to play around with it. So if I click let's write a grant, it's going to now follow those instructions, those steps. And it should be asking me, kind of the steps that I kind of went through. So we'll kind of see if it catches my information. And then we can also always click share and share a link. So this did not stop here. It gave me a general structure. Okay. So give me the details. Yeah. So we are writing a grant for United Way to fund after school meals, something like that, right? So now it's going to start a conversation with me, and I'm going to answer the questions, and then at the end, it's going to give me kind of the output. So we can then iterate the system prompt based on what we get, right? So like this is way too long, I think, at the beginning. So I'm going to change, background information, ask the team member about a short introduction, make sure the response is no more than 3 sentences, something like that. And I can just go down here and click save, or I go up here and click save. I'm going to go ahead and make it public on chip, which means that other people could use this in the future. If I don't want anyone else to see it, I can just do anyone with the link and then confirm. And so what we're doing now is we're building that kind of back and forth, that step prompting. And so you can just play around with this system prompt, see how it kicks out results. And when you feel good about it, when you have something that you like and want to share with your team, you can just go over here to share and just grab the link, right? And so now this is going to be that tool that I just built for anyone to use. And again, they don't have to have a paid plan, right? They can just start using this. It'll use that as I update the grant. You can see now it's asking for a brief description. And so it'll start that conversation. If I want to put it on a website or somewhere else, we can embed an iframe. And that would actually then live on like a Notion page or a website or whatever it might be. So would love to stop here and see what kind of step prompts people came up with and what challenges you maybe hit. So anyone want to go off mute and give us any feedback on their step prompt or maybe what they found as they tried building? We'll go to Reedy until you're ready, Sean, but go ahead, Reedy. Yeah, you can just unmute, I think.
So I love the idea of step prompting. I think this is something that a lot of people are sort of glazing over and not really like they're doing these sort of like bulk prompts and they're not getting the responses that you said that they want. The thing with step prompting, the thing that I'm experiencing with the app is you have to be really specific that you really want the AI to respond to certain parts of it. So for example, after I sort of like copied your thing over and changed it to the progress reports that I was creating, and then I said, write a progress report, it gave me an outline of a progress report and had zero back and forth with me. And so what I had to do was go back into my step prompt and then actually say, never give the response until you ask questions. And so
Yeah.
then it started asking me the questions. And so I think it has to be like really, really specific. And it
Yeah.
still didn't quite get me what I needed. So I think the step prompting, I think is a brilliant idea. And I really love that. But I think it needs to be like really precise with how you want to make it work.
Yeah, that's really great. And if you can reference specific steps, like, make sure to take the answers from steps 3 and 4 in the final output or something like that. That's a really good one. That's
Now,
great feedback too.
would this work in just if you were having a regular chat with ChatGPT? Would it work if you just did step prompt? Because I haven't done step prompting with ChatGPT.
Yeah, well, the problem would be you'd have to put it all in at once and then start the
Right.
conversation. So
Right.
it
You
could,
can save it.
yeah, it could work. And then you'd have to do it every time. And then if you shared that link with someone else, which is how you would, get other people to use it, it wouldn't necessarily, it would lose
Yeah.
it after the first time. So
And then
yeah, so
just
there's
one
definitely
last
ways.
question.
Oh yeah, of course.
With Chip, so what you had said earlier, Chip is using the free version of ChatGPT. Is that right?
It's actually GPT-4, so it's using the paid version, but you don't have
So
to have a paid account.
right. So if it's GPT-4, then it should be able to crawl the web. Yeah.
So we use their API. So their API doesn't allow you to use like the web
Oh,
crawl.
I see.
Yeah, yeah. So
Got it.
not yet. I would assume that's
Got it.
coming, but yeah.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. No, great question. Sean, were you able to figure out the audio or happy to have you jump in? If not, you can drop it
I'll
in
have
the
a go.
chat.
Can you,
Hey, there
can
you
you
go.
hear me?
That's working now.
Excellent.
Just had to warm up.
My idea for this is probably a little bit too ambitious for the first one. Was it's to help people plan for networking events, to encourage social enterprises to network and collaborate together. So I'd asked it to said that it was a successful skilled event organizer and networker. Your job is to create a framework for starting a business networking event specifically for non-profit organizations. Left that the last bit of the copy and paste prompt in, and then went to the background information. Step 1, background info. Ask the team member for a short introduction of the type of networking event that they wish to organize, and sort of built it that way. But it's given me quite a long first answer. So it's gone through a lot of steps. It's kind of like, it feels like it's jumped to step 5,
Yeah.
given me a load
Oh,
of stuff, and then said, is there anything else you want?
yeah.
So I think that's probably learning for me, just learning how to narrow
Yeah.
it down a little bit and make it a little bit more specific.
Yeah, very similar to what Reedy said. So the two things that I found is like in the right framework at the top, it's really good to say something like, never respond longer than X or respond like text messages or something like that. That just
Yeah.
in general will keep it less verbose. But then I would even put, like Reedy said, more specific stops after each step. So before proceeding, ask, are you done? Or before proceeding, do X, Y, Z. And you can even make it positive, right? Like before proceeding, tell them, great job. Are you ready to go forward? So, because I always say like AI is kind of like a puppy. Like it just really wants to make you happy.
Yeah.
And it'll do whatever it can to get to the answer as fast as possible. And that's why it'll hallucinate too, right? If it doesn't have all the information, it'll just make it up because it wants to get to the end goal. So you really have to limit it in a way, put brakes on it.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, really good. So I wanted to dive into step prompting because I do think a lot of us at nonprofits work with people who are less skilled and maybe less interested even, right, in AI. And so if we can build something that is, beginner friendly, where they can just answer questions, I think that's really powerful. And, we spent 10 minutes on it. You spend another 10, 20 minutes. You can really tune these things pretty quickly in a way that will give you close to the answer you want. Remember last time we talked about the human sandwich? I always reinforce that it's always going to start with you, giving an AI the question and the training. The AI will give you the answer like it's doing, but you're still going to have to tell people that at the end, you're still going to need to edit and share it, and kind of make sure it's good. So we're not quite to the one shot getting your answer right off the bat stage. So just setting expectations there is good. So yeah, Hardik, go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. For step prompting, I would like to add one thing.
Yeah, please.
We need precise steps for our custom GPT if we want to work on it. As you know already, I have created 5 custom GPT for the hackathon.
Yeah.
So in which I was thinking about helping the startup companies who are facing issue in growing. So I think of steps and applied it, but the results weren't as good as I have imagined.
Yeah.
So I think in that area, we have to think of every single steps and we have to make precise steps for that.
Yeah. Getting it more precise along.
And
Yeah.
And for other ideas, I was able to work on it and the results were pretty good. So
Good.
for some custom GPTs, we need to be as more precise as possible compared to others.
Yeah. I think that's totally true. Yeah. And you actually are thinking about taking options off the table. I think when you're using ChatGPT in single player mode on your own, the world's kind of your oyster, right? Like you can drive it anywhere you want because you're in charge. But when you flip it around and you're preparing this for other people, usually you actually want less options, right? You want to drive them down a pretty specific path. So I think that's a good way to think about it. Super helpful. Good. All right. So you have enough to kind of be dangerous now with step prompting. You can create some of these and share them out. So the next thing we want to do is think about moving beyond us creating GPTs and thinking about how could our data create action with AI. And so this would be like automating AI is a way to think about it. So to do this, we're going to use a tool called Zapier. And Zapier is a tool that connects different software across the web. We had Reed on in our last session who works at Zapier in their AI kind of division. And, his goal is like, how do we put AI in the middle of our workflows so that it can help do some of the heavy lifting for us, but still give us the information in a way that we can then take action on. So what I wanted to show you is kind of how to set that up. And a couple things to know before you get started. Zapier is free if you're just doing 2 steps. You get a 14-day trial. So you can sign up today and do a lot of the automations we'll play with, even if it's multiple steps. What I have found is with AI, almost all of the automations are going to require more than 2 steps. Because if you think about a typical automation is going to be you send some information, AI does something to it, summarizes it, translates it, writes it, but then you still want that information to go somewhere. Like you want it to be a blog post, you want it to be a email, you want it to be put somewhere, right? So most of the prompt or most of the automations we'll look at will probably be a 3-step automation at minimum. There is a nonprofit discount for Zapier, and I'll just grab that as well. So if you are, looking to use this after 14 days, this will get you 15% off, it looks like. So that's definitely worth checking out. So let me tell you a couple of my favorite uses, then I'll show you how to build them. So one of the things I find is I have a lot of good ideas when I'm not by a computer. So that might be in a sauna, driving my kids around late at night, and I don't want to get a screen out. And so what I've found is AI is a really good way for me to turn half-baked ideas into something that I can take action on when the time is right. And so the way I do this is actually by using my phone. So whatever device you're on, you have something like a voice memo, right? And so I'll just open up my phone, like this on my voice memo app. Whoop, there it is, and record it. But then I want AI to help me turn that into an actual thing. And so I can email that voice memo, and that can set off an entire chain reaction of automations. This can happen in different ways. So what we would call that is a trigger, right? The thing that starts the automation is a trigger. And a trigger could be lots of things. It could be sending an email, like sending a voice memo to a specific email address. It could be when you add something to a spreadsheet that triggers an automation. It could be when somebody signs up for your gala or your event, right? So they sign up on Eventbrite, and then that kicks off automations. So the first thing we need to think about with automation is, what is our trigger going to be? Where do we want the information to end up? And then we can kind of fill in the middle, right? So what I'll do now is I'll go over to Zapier and kind of walk through how you set some of this up. So to get started with Zapier, I will put the link in first, and then I'll kind of show you what it looks like. And let me do an incognito view so you can kind of see what it looks like. So go ahead and you can go to Zapier. I'll log out. No, that's all right. All right, cool. So here is my screen on Zapier. You can see I signed up for a free account, but I have 14 days to try the paid features. And I'll give you just a second to go ahead and go to Zapier.com and sign up. Again, you can log in with Google or your email, and you'll have a trial for 14 days, no credit card needed. So you can kind of try out what we're doing today and see if it's worth, investment. Now with Zapier, we can create these, if we know exactly what we want to do. But what's nice is they're actually using AI to help you create your automations. So if you know what you're trying to do, you can just type it in and have it create it for you. So let's go ahead and do the voice memo one, because that's kind of fun. So what I'm going to do is when I get a new email, summarize into a blog post, something like that. And then Zapier is going to do its best to create an automation for me, right? So it's going to give me what tools it thinks I should use, and then I can go in and just change those, or I can create it from scratch. So first I'll just kind of show you how you do it with AI and sort of how that works. And then I'll go in and show you how you can kind of create these if you know exactly what you're doing. So we'll give it a second here to try to create it. Obviously, the more specific you are, the more successful this will be. So we'll see how long their AI power takes. And if you have questions, go ahead and drop it in. All right. So Joseph, you mentioned using Zapier. So while this is kind of loading, tell us a little bit about how you use it with your podcast.
Yeah. So I have it integrated with Calendly and Google Sheets. So whenever I have an intro meeting with a potential guest, after that meeting, I have an email automatically sent to them with follow-up scheduling for the actual interview and follow-up form to collect information about their nonprofit. And when they fill out that form, it's automatically pushed to my website as a draft published aspect of our database. And so I could just go in and publish it if everything looks good. And then I also have another trigger where, in addition to sending it to my website, it creates a Google Doc show notes to prepare me ahead of my interview. And so that's kind of what I'm using for kind of leading up to the interview. And what I'm looking to do is post-interview, use transcriptions to help start drafting blog posts for the actual interview, in addition to some other social media posting. So yeah, really cool tool.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll kind of walk through sort of how to create these, and then I'll show you some kind of easy use cases we could get started. So this one's giving us an email to blog post. I'm going to go ahead and click try it because it's close enough for us to kind of jam on here. So when you get into Zapier and you start creating a zap, as they call it, an automation, essentially you're going to log into the different tools, and then that will kind of make everything work together. I find that this new inbound email I use a lot for triggers. So this is a really easy way. What you do is you actually spin up a dummy or like a specific email address. So I might call this one like voice memo, and it gives me this long Zapier email. But anything I send to this email is going to trigger this. And so what I do on my phone then, I save this as a contact, right? And then on my voice memo, I click the share button. And then I do an email to this address, and it's saved in my contacts as like Zapier email, right? So that way, when I'm in the sauna, I record a 1-minute idea for a blog post. I send the blog post to this email address, and then it's going to trigger everything. So you create your own email, make sure to copy that, put it in your phone, and it'll test the trigger if I want to send an email to it. Now, right now, what would happen is it would create a blog post in Webflow. So I would sign in to Webflow here and it would create an item. That would work well if, you know, if that voice memo could have text, but we need to first transcribe that, right? Because it's audio. If I had an email, if I forwarded an email, it could just take that text and put it straight into Webflow if that was my email provider. Or if I decided, I don't use Webflow, I use Ghost, right? Like that's actually what I blog on personally. So I would use Ghost and then I could connect it here. So you can kind of see where some of these are. If they don't have your blogging platform, you could also just do it on a Google document, right? So you could have it spit out a Google document and then you could just copy and paste that into your account. So if I need to, add a little flavor to it, what I want to do is add a step in the middle. And this is going to be where AI comes in, right? So what we can do is we can add ChatGPT as a middle step to take our text or our audio, transcribe it, improve it, change it, whatever it might be. So what we have with the event is a lot of different ways that ChatGPT can be used. The one I find myself using most is conversation, but there's also, summarized text. You could write an email, so it'll actually do that for you. So there's a lot of different actions that you could use. And if we want to do transcription specifically, they have one called Whisper. And so this is with OpenAI instead of ChatGPT. And with this one, we're going to create a transcription. So what we're going to do here, create a transcription. I would sign in, and then basically I'll take the attachment, transcribe it, and then I'll probably have ChatGPT summarize it and then spit out the result on Google Docs. That's how I would think about like a simple kind of flow for that. So let's look at one that's a little bit, less weird than just a voice memo, and then we'll have you guys try to build one yourself. So let's pull up, let's see, I had a couple here that I thought we might like. Let's just go sheet to sheet. This is a really common kind of flow. And you can kind of think about what a flow might be for your nonprofit then. So let's go, here we go. So I find that I use Google Sheets a lot in Zapier because it allows me to put information somewhere, do something with it, and then put the output right back on the sheet. So what I'm going to do as a trigger is a new row. And what I did as an example here is I actually uploaded everyone who's signed up for this webinar. So you might see your name or other people's names here. As I add people or as people register, so this would work with Zoom. I did it with Luma, or we're registering. As people get registered, they'd get added here, and that'll trigger a new action, right? So when someone registers for my event, they're automatically going into Google Sheets. And then what I want to do is I want to write a thank you email to all of you, right? So I can go here into ChatGPT and I can choose the write an email option. Let's see if I can edit this. There we go. I'm going to move my Zoom thing. All right. So here we can see the app and event is ChatGPT, and I'm going to write an email. I log into my account, and then the action is all the fields I can fill in here. And I can either type these in, or even better is to generate them dynamically, right? So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing the recipient name from my spreadsheet, which is going there from Luma, right? I'm grabbing the email from the spreadsheet. The from name, I'm just going to type that in. My email prompt is going to be much like we did with our step prompting. So you're a kind AI teacher, write 2-paragraph thank you note for attending the workshop, use emojis to make it fun. You can specifically mention that they hope to learn to use AI for X. That was one of the things you answered when you registered, right? Is you told me what you're hoping to use AI for. So it's going to write the thank you note and remind you almost what you hope to learn, kind of reinforcing or helping you feel like you learned that. I can set the tone. I'm just going to do plain text. I'll just use 3.5 for now. If you have a paid account, you could select 4. And then you can decide how weird you want it to get. Temperature is basically like the higher it is, the more creative. It might mean it might hallucinate or do weirder things. The lower it is, it's going to be like very straight and narrow. So that's kind of fun to play with. And then I'm going to continue. And what I'm going to do then is actually look up a row. So what I'm going to do, well, we can see the result here. So here's my test. It said, thank you for attending the workshop. Just want to say a huge thank you for attending. Your presence made it even more insightful. Fantastic to see you. Hope you had a great time learning how AI can be used for teaching and learning. So you can see it's pulling that from their registration response. And then, as I said, remind them that they should apply it. So it kind of talks about that. Thanks for being part of it. So that could be enough. I could just do that, right? Just the spreadsheet in ChatGPT. I would just have to go in here and copy that out. But that's kind of annoying. I don't really want to have to go into this tool to do that. So what I want to do next is put it back into my spreadsheet. And so what I'm going to actually do is look up for a row. So look up for the row that has that same email, and then I'm going to add that email text into the row. So here's what it looks like, once we get it built in, is it'll actually drop my email right here, right? So now I can go in here and actually see that email on my spreadsheet. And as people get added, it'll just create those emails in real time. And so you can see how this is like a really kind of powerful way to spend, sharpening the axe a little bit. You spend maybe 30 minutes to an hour creating a really good automation. And then every time something happens, it'll create that output for you. So a great example would be maybe you write a blog post and you copy and paste that into the spreadsheet. And maybe you have rows for a LinkedIn version, a Twitter version, Instagram version. It'll automatically create those every time you do a blog post, or every time someone donates to your nonprofit, it generates the thank you email, or every time somebody comes to your gala, registers on Eventbrite, it'll do something. So you can kind of see how you can connect tools, and AI really fits in the middle as like the improvement step. And so we haven't had that in the past. Before you could move data between things, but now you can really improve it or change it and then output it where you want. So I'll pause there because I know that's really fast. Zapier can get pretty technical, but I wanted to give you a taste of what's possible with automation. So let's go ahead and take some questions here, and then we'll maybe see if you guys have a chance to try it out. So Breedy said, you have some limited experience. Is it possible to replace apps? We have an AA, can summarize the notes, send a follow. So it will need to, Zapier needs to connect to an email tool, but it can connect to Gmail as a draft. So essentially your output could be a draft email in Gmail, but you'd still have to go through and send those. So that's, depends how many people probably and how personalized you want it to get. Like, I still think the generic, like, thanks for coming, everyone, here's a link to the recording. Like, that's probably still best done with an email tool like MailChimp, but you could definitely do more personal follow-up. And if it's high value, like a donor, like definitely worth it, right? So you kind of decide time savings versus impact. So that's how I would kind of think about it. Great question though. Yeah. And let's see what else we had. Cool. So Jason B, let's see. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you're using it? That's a great example you just mentioned. If you want to unmute, go for it.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Sounds great. Yep.
All right. So yeah, I set it up where HubSpot has the ability to do this, but it's super, super expensive to go to that next level.
Yeah.
So I set it up for them where they have offices in about 5 different cities, and they wanted emails coming directly to salespeople rather than people having to funnel things or search for things. So I set up a Zap for them that it pulls the information from HubSpot when a customer fills out the web form, and then emails it directly to that office and has a link in there to the contact within HubSpot, and then all the information in the email. And it is super slick and saves the company roughly $8,000 a month. So
wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's your ROI. The $29 a month for Zapier feels cheap then in retrospect.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. I think, automation can be quite simple like that, right? Like just moving information from one place to another. I think hopefully what you've seen from both of these lessons today, what we're trying to do is raise the floor, right? So what step prompting does is it almost raises the floor for people who have less experience or don't know how to approach AI from like a question asking perspective. And then Zapier can do the same thing with automating data transfer or communication, right? Where it's like, if I don't know how to write a good, Twitter post, I could push my blog post through Zapier, put it back on the spreadsheet, and now it's there for me to get. Or if I'm not, strong at writing donor relation emails, or even if it just takes me a lot of time, right? I can get rid of that step. So I think this is really where we're going to see a lot of power moving forward, is people taking AI, but really abstracting it away, right? Like your donors, your volunteers don't know necessarily that they're even using AI themselves. They just know that when they paste that donor name into a spreadsheet, it will create an email in the next column, and they can copy and paste that email into their Gmail, right? So I hope that's where we go, because that really helps everyone adopt AI and raise the floor for everyone without them being super technical. So I think there's going to be, kind of this tip of the spear, which is people who are willing to play a little bit, to iterate a little bit and make things work, and then hand it off to teams, especially volunteers who don't have time, right? To like improve processes for your nonprofit. They just want to come in and help. And if you tell them, paste something here, you'll get the next row, you can go like that. That really makes it, I think, appealing for people to help out. So we're excited at Chip with integrating Zapier. It's kind of the next thing on our roadmap. And so what we're thinking about with Chip is how can you use the information that you get within a Chip chat for all this automation? So could you get information from a chat and add it into a form or a CRM, right? Could you take people who register for your Chip chat and do email marketing off of it? So I think there's a lot of business value to come from kind of these GPT conversations that we can't do right now with ChatGPT. So we're trying to sort of build that business case with Chip. So that's kind of some of the stuff we're looking forward to sharing. So watch for that kind of in the next weeks and months as we kind of grow our product. So great question here from Sean. Is there something about creating logo ideas or podcast artwork, for example? Yeah. So you can do DALL-E in Zapier. So the trick is look for OpenAI instead of ChatGPT. So the one I showed you with the transcription, that also does DALL-E. So that would be a great example of where you could automatically create artwork based on the title of a podcast, right? Or you could transcribe an audio file. Like think about emailing an audio file to your Zapier email. It transcribes it, it summarizes it, and then it creates an image off the summary, right? So multiple steps. And then you have the transcription for your show notes if you want. You have the image for your artwork. And I don't know, Joseph, are you doing that or something like that now? It seems similar to me.
Yeah, we use a third-party app to do that, but I'm looking to not pay that third-party app and do it through this method.
Yeah.
I think the transcription of the full video, converting the video to audio and then audio to transcription is where we're getting a block, but we're working through it. Yeah.
Yeah. And in my experience, this is all iterative, right? So exactly what you experienced with the step prompt, magnify that maybe 5 times with the automation, because now you're working with multiple tools. There's a little bit of lag sometimes. So it's not always perfect, but give yourself a few hours, because if it's worth doing, if it's worth spending 1 or 2 hours building it so that all the time saved afterwards, then I think that's a good use for automation. If it's not worth that time, like you should probably just keep doing it manually, right? So AI is helpful. It's not going to solve all of your problems, but it will help you save time, I think, and also improve the kind of baseline quality. So that was kind of what I wanted to cover today, a little bit on what's possible with Chip, what's possible with Zapier, and give you a little bit of hands-on experience so you can build it out. We would love to see what you build. So definitely send over, kind of what you've built. And if you have questions, we're happy to help. So Andre just put our links in the chat where you can reach out on Twitter or LinkedIn. And then maybe I'll grab also our blog, I should say. And this is where I'll put that into the record. So if you want to go back and look at anything that we talked about, see the examples, you can kind of go to the Substack there and subscribe, and we'll put up the everything afterwards. So want to thank you for coming out, for being willing to get your hands dirty and see what's next. And, I think all of us are kind of building the future of this, and what better way to make an impact in the world than helping nonprofits better fulfill their mission quicker and with fewer resources. So appreciate playing and experiencing. We're going to send out the winners of the hackathon. So look for those in a blog post, and we can thank them for participating. Folks like Hardik who entered, and we'll share all of those so you can use their GPTs as well. Because I think this is really a collaborative experience. As we build these, more people can use them and iterate on it. So excited to see how we can all use AI to work smarter and faster. So go ahead, Breedy, you have a question before we head out?
Just one last question. With
Of course.
Chip AI, if you're using the free version, is your data or your GPT that you create available for public consumption or for your consumption as an app creator?
Yeah, no, we don't see anything that that people converse on, and you can choose when you save it if you want it public so other people could use it, or if it's just for you with a link. So we're kind of taking a privacy first approach. If you want your users to show you what they've been saying, we have the option to share a chat. So when someone shares a chat, that gives a transcript of the conversation to whoever they share it with. But by default, that chat goes away. It's only stored on the user's computer, like on their cookie, basically. So that way they can see chat history, but only available to them. So yeah, so that's kind of how we're building it now, but would love feedback too. If some people want it different ways, I know if you're using an education, it's important for teachers to potentially see it. So we've had a lot of discussions on how to build that. So yeah, would love feedback there, what people think is the best approach. Great. Awesome. Yeah. Well, let us know what else you want to see in Chip. We're happy to build it and make it work for you. As Andre mentioned, you can build 3 applications for free. So go ahead and build those up, and we'll keep in touch and let you know what other features are coming down the road. So have a great day, and thanks for spending time with us. Talk to you soon. Bye.